Welcome back everyone. Today we are in for a bit of a treat. We are going to be looking at the new DLC, Stonethorn. Now this has 2 dungeons. We're going to go into one of them. We're going to go into Stone Garden. And we've actually got 3 guests today. We've got Mike Finnigan, who is the lead encounter designer. We've got Slama, who is the senior content designer. And Rich Lambert, of course, as you all know, the creative director of ZeniMax Online Studios. We are going to look at the dungeon and obviously see some of the mechanics, explain how they were made and why. And we're also going to go over some of the performance stuff that we can look forward to in the upcoming patch as well. Stay tuned people, and don't forget to hit that sub button if you want to see more videos like this.
How did you do that? How did you do that?
And I guess the first big thing is, thanks for doing this with us. We always look forward to doing these runs with folks and talking a little bit about dungeons and whatnot. So I guess before I hand it over to Mike and he starts giving us the kind of the guided tour, let's all travel to him.
Okay.
But this is yeah. You gonna teach Xynode how to play the game?
Last one you said the great Xynode. That's recorded and on YouTube forever.
This is our 27th update, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it. There's 2 new dungeons in here, lots of cool new gear, cosmetics, things like that, but I'm actually really excited about the performance improvements that we have coming with this update. There's a lot. In addition to kind of the PvP tests that we're going to be running, there's a whole bunch of improvements in terms of persistent AoE work that we did. We went through all the item sets in the game, or almost all the item sets in the game, and re-scripted them to be more performant. That was something that has needed to be done for a long time, so that got done. We implemented a new critical memory system, which essentially handles high memory situations better and prevents crashes, so console folks rejoice. There's been some physics engine improvements, hardening things to reduce the crashiness and the performance there, or performance impact there. Database caching is coming, so this essentially, I guess the easiest way to explain it is it reduces the contention on the production database.
Okay.
So now when the server is under load and the database is under load, you're going to get a lot better performance. The database isn't going to be the bottleneck anymore. So things will feel a little bit snappier. Loads will be quicker. Saves will be quicker. And you should have less kind of overall problems with the database, which is good. Intermittent load screens is another big thing that we worked on to fix. So running around Craglorn, you saw it a lot. Running around in Cyrodiil, you saw it.
Yeah.
Those should be fixed. And then something near and dear to Finn and Shane's heart is trial performance and general instance performance, kind of overall.
Okay.
The team spent some time looking at how the server handles trials and how they load on the server, and basically they're distributed more, and they are smarter in how they are distributed. So at the top end, I know a lot of the kind of top end groups would instance fish to try to get a good instance. They don't have to do that anymore. All that stuff is kind of gone and fixed and cleaned up. So lots of really good things coming on the perf side for ESO, which is awesome.
Does that apply to arenas like Dragonstar, Maelstrom, stuff like that as well?
The focus was just on trials,
okay,
because trials are the biggest impact to performance in terms of physics engine and stuff like that. We're going to see how these changes to the trials work, and if we need to go more and do more, then we'll do more, but it should be significantly better than it was.
Sounds good.
I think those are the big bits from me. Mike, do you want to play tour guide now? And are we normal or vet? I didn't even look. I just
This is normal.
Okay.
Because Finn washed out.
Okay. It's all Finn's fault. Got it.
Sure thing. So, Xynode, have you played the base game? Anyways,
I've
so
logged on once before in beta.
this right here is Gwendis. You know Gwendis. If you did
Yeah.
Daggerfall, you recognize her.
Correct.
It's, Ribbon Spire. Member of House Ravenwatch.
You shouted that with your fist in the air, didn't you?
Yeah, I love it. Member of House Ravenwatch. She, her and Brandis target enemy vampires and they go after them. But she's here investigating something else. So there's a bad guy in here named Arcasis, and he was instrumental. If you play Greymore, you recognize some of the other creatures in here, Stone Husks, and he was instrumental in kind of bringing those to life. So, what we are doing here
Too
is
far,
investigating
too far.
what he's too far, huh?
You're good, you're good. You were just
What we're-
fluffing the mic.
Anyways, so what we're investigating what he's been doing here. He's been kind of given his own place to, you know, experiment and do whatever he wants. So actually, you just saw me picking up these mushrooms here. This isn't something we normally do in dungeons where we have a collection.
Okay.
But if you actually mouse over, okay, guess you guys can just pull, I guess.
I didn't pull. Not this time.
Time limit or something?
Yeah.
So I picked up these mushrooms. This isn't something, I don't know if you got this one over here, but this is something we normally do in dungeons where you have like a harvest node. But if you kind of like open up your inventory after picking one of those up and mouse over it, it tells you that it's used for experiments within Stoneguard.
Okay.
This is something we tried to, you know, start in Unhallowed Grave, where we kind of have secrets that we don't explain to players other than through the dungeon means or something like that. It's not something you know we explicitly call out in the quest or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we want, whenever possible, we like to kind of carry that forward. It's so funny to run through with you guys because stuff just dies. So we don't explain. The secrets aren't quite as hidden in here as they were in Stone Garden, so it's not like they're not on the map. The secrets are actually on the map in here.
Okay.
But how you interact with them, we leave that up to players to kind of figure out. So some more of these.
How many of them are there in the dungeon? Or is it just a case of pick them up as you go?
So you need 3 per secret, and there's about... Shane can answer that.
Yeah, there should be 12 total every time you load up the dungeon.
Okay.
And they persist, so they don't go away after you've been through the dungeon. So they stay in your inventory. So even if you get extras, the next time you come back here, you'll have some
Okay.
set up and ready. So one thing we heard is from players was they really liked, or they really wanted 3rd difficulty is what we've always heard from players. Oh, we want a 3rd level of difficulty that we can activate. So in veteran mode, we have these. This is also the new challenge banner that we're going to use as a standard going forward. Whenever you get to a dungeon that has a hard mode, we're going to put these challenge banner kind of structures in here, so that it becomes like kind of like a normalized language for this is what you do is you activate the banner and then you deactivate the banner and stuff like that. So, but for this boss or for this dungeon, we decided to kind of try and address that the suggestions or the desire for players to have 3 levels of difficulty. So this dungeon only has 3 bosses, but each boss has their own hard mode in veteran. So
that's
you
brilliant.
can actually go here. Yeah, you can actually go here and activate a hard mode for each boss.
Available only in veteran.
Much like we did in Sunspire and Kyne's Aegis. What that allows us to do is, get that kind of 3rd balance point, extra layer of difficulty that we can. We can take the edge off of veteran a little bit, challenge players at really at the high end. So, and you're not really out anything because there's 3 bosses on what would be considered the crit path. In other words, there's 3 bosses you have to defeat for the dungeon, but there's extra stuff to do on the side that you could.
So, I mean, this is probably going a little too far ahead, but are you intending on doing this kind of stuff for other dungeons?
Well, part of this is figuring out,
Does it work?
Do people like it? Is this well received? Do people enjoy this kind of thing? The overwhelming feedback for the secrets and what we did in Unhallowed Grave, absolutely is one of those things that, like, okay, we heard that feedback and people really, really like it. So going forward, whenever we can, we'll take a look at development time to see, if we can incorporate those kind of things in the future. But as far as the 3 bosses, 3 hard modes, so far the feedback has been really good. We're going to take a look at kind of how the data comes out on live and see what people say about it and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, giving the players a little bit more freedom to customize their experience is very interesting to us.
And there's actually a lot of that. It's not just the 3 hard modes. There's 3 hard modes, but there's secrets that give you 1, 2, or 3 buffs, and they change the way the final fight is encountered. So, like, there's a lot of levers that players can turn themselves in here. So even if you want to do all 3 hard modes, but you still want to take the edge off because you want these specialized buffs, you could then do the secrets and the side content. If you want the hardest of the hard, you go straight through, do all bosses, all hard modes. You don't do any of the secrets.
The idea behind that is actually very, very good. I mean, I don't know whether you're going to path out deliberately 3 and 3, but having the hard mode buttons, having the secret buttons, all this different stuff allows people to actually do what they want to some extent, actually explore, if you want to use that word, rather than just run to the boss and kill it. Because traditionally, I mean, as far as old dungeons are concerned, not necessarily the DLC ones, or not the recent ones at least, it's like, you run through, kill trash, nuke the last boss, pick up the helmet, great. The content is nice, and I'm not going to besmirch it in any way, shape, or form, but what I mean is it's very standard of what you'd expect to see in a dungeon. This kind of stuff changes everything.
And Castle Thorn, for the most part, is a lot like the experience you described. It's our classic dungeon experience. There's 5 bosses, it's fairly linear, you go through. And this one is the one we decided to try a little bit different. 3 bosses, 3 hard modes, a lot of extra stuff on the side. Another thing is, to get to the story elements of some of this stuff, Gwendis is in here, and she's actually incorporated kind of in this dungeon a little bit. So you saw her in the first boss, she's picking a lock and stuff like that. So whatever we try to do as we do dungeons, as much as possible, we try to incorporate the NPCs so they're not just standing. Yeah, they're not just standing outside of a gate and like, oh, you go kill the boss. Also, this is it. This is your moment.
This is your moment. I don't care what you're saying now. I'm just gonna slap stuff. No, go on, go on.
This is
I don't need to ask a stupid question of what made you do this, because let's face it, everybody wants this to happen. But okay, what made you do this?
Shane.
It just seemed to fit the theme of the dungeon really well. Who doesn't want to be a big werewolf behemoth stomping around a laboratory and busting stuff up?
Everybody does.
I think also, thinking about how the final boss mechanics play, and the theme was going to be, how could we make this giant kaiju battle between a big stone husk and a player that turns into this big thing too? So that clash felt really cool, and then just make sure we spread it out to the rest of the dungeon and get players to experience it as they go through it. Not just the final boss.
So this DLC, I mean, on the surface, 2 dungeons. Awesome, we normally see 2 dungeons, but underneath it there's quite a lot of effort. I mean, there's a lot of effort anyway, but there's a lot more effort put into this particular DLC in terms of kind of getting everybody engaged. Like you said, you've got your classic dungeon, which is great because that covers a certain audience. You've got then secrets and levers and extra hard modes and all the rest of it, which covers the other part of the audience. You've obviously got a massive performance update at the same time, which is huge. You've got an overhaul for sets, which is huge. And then that Juffy transformation there, not only have we been asking for it, but you've actually incorporated a load of new skills, entirely new skills. How did that come about, as opposed to just creating a massive werewolf that slaps stuff? Because that's almost like a new skill line inside a DLC rather than a chapter, even though it's a short-lived situation.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we kind of broached that subject a little bit in, like, if you look at what was it, Frostvault. We had the Skeeveton phase where we kind of build our own abilities. We did it all the way back in like Ruins of Mazatoon, where you kind of were given your own phase, and that was one of those things that like that was born out of. And Shane can speak to this again too. Is that was born out of like the final boss fight kind of thing. It's like you imagine, you know, how you're going to do this, and like he said, the big Gaiju fight, you know, where you have a werewolf versus a behemoth versus all this other stuff, and that's the goal for this fight. And then taking a look at the abilities that we're going to give you, or that you're going to have, and making sure they fit in the fight. So every one of these abilities on the thing that you are given as a werewolf behemoth is important in the final fight. And if you mouse over it, you see it, they're going to do different things. And actually, when you do the hard modes, or the hard mode of the fight, you really have to be good at that phase.
Right.
You really kind of have to know how that functions in order to excel at it. So yeah, that's kind of where that comes from, and then allowing you to, and then making sure that kind of like all the abilities that we give you also make sense from the perspective of just normal play. So it's not just, oh, this ability counteracts this and this ability counteracts this. It's also what is this just fun to play?
Yeah.
And then peppering it through the dungeon so that people kind of get that experience before they do it. It also really fit, like Shane mentioned, it really fits story-wise that, you know, this guy's an alchemist, and he's created alchemical werewolves. You know what I mean? These guys aren't infected with lycanthropy. These guys drank a potion, and all of a sudden were infected by lycanthropy. So that's kind of
to ask if you're going to use it later, or is it just for this dungeon?
We'll use what later?
The idea of the whole
transformation
via a potion type thing. And I don't mean just a standard potion. I mean within story or within a role.
I mean, I won't ever rule anything out. Am I going to say, are you going to turn into a werewolf behemoth again? It's kind of too early to talk about anything like that. But
that's what I thought.
you know, I mean, we've used it twice already, a kind of a transformation with new skills and stuff like that. So if people like it and enjoy it, then it's going to be something we kind of want to deliver. This is actually pretty. This actual room right here is pretty cool, and it highlights the nature of Arcasis has taken Dwemer structures. This was an ancient Dwemer building, and he's incorporated his like alchemical tanks. So there's a Charis in there. There's Durzogs around here, and these are this like Iker that's in here, and you can see when we went to the world builders and we said, hey, you know, we want we are looking for like essentially a mad scientist laboratory.
Okay,
is what we want, and they delivered that, and it was fantastic for us to be able to kind of like incorporate the Dwemer stuff, so you recognize that it's Dwemer, but then make it wholly new and original for our cases. It's pretty awesome. So while it's Dwemer, you still recognize, nope, this is a mad scientist laboratory.
Yeah. The whole mad scientist thing has been... It's been used a few times, but each time it's very different and yet still successful, because you've got some of the coolest bosses in the game are actually a bit nuts. So the Mad Architect in Vaults of Madness, then you've got the Concoctor in Scalecaller Peak, which is awesome, by the way. And then you've got this, which is another mad potion wielding scientist type dude, and it's again very, very different yet crazy and fun at the same time.
And this is one of those ones where we wanted to incorporate and invoke the classic, because people always talk about, you know, like, well, how did you come up with the ideas for Stone Garden or Stonethorn and or Stone Garden and Castle Thorn? And it was like it's pretty much Dark Heart of Skyrim, taking a look at horror stories and then invoking those and kind of incorporating those into Tamriel. So you have a classic Gothic vampire castle in Castle Thorn, And then you have this, which is the classic mad scientist story, but then incorporating in Tamriel. So science isn't necessarily a thing, but alchemy is. So he's a mad alchemist. And what's funny is the outfit that this guy is wearing was, I think it was designed a while ago. And that was but when we saw it in concept, we were like, well, that's got to be the mad alchemist now.
Yeah.
So like, you see his kind of like almost like a white lab coat, and this is, not to mention his voice actor is just phenomenal. He is truly, he really sold it. Like we wrote the script and the VO, our fiction guys did, and then they sat in on the recordings, and he just knocked it out of the park. The guy that got it.
I do like the voiceovers, and well, you know this from before, but I'm very into the sound effects and all that kind of stuff. So I think since, I want to say Vault of Madness with Groftar, but apart from that, since Elsewhere, I think some of the sounds and the voiceovers and all the rest of it have had a bit of a kick, if you know what I mean. They've gone up in quality. They seem to be much more aesthetically pleasing, if you like, in that respect. Some people play with no sound. I cannot play with no sound, especially with some of the impact sounds and some of the funnies that you hear the characters coming out with.
I will make sure to tell our audio designers that, because they'll love to hear that.
One of my favorites is still impact from Groftar.
Yeah, the big block.
It's almost that metal paint that's on it and stuff. Yeah, it's really, really good. But the voice acting for this guy has been fantastic. Even when you fight him in the final boss fight, spoilers. You know, just his over-the-top performance and stuff like that is just great. So, as speaking of that, we will head on into the research wing. So this is what we tried to do in here was give you some familiarity in that there's 3 distinct sections of this dungeon. There's the first section, then there's the outdoor section, then you get into it proper, and that's where you start to see the stone husks and the experiments that he's doing on this. And this is the research. This is where all the weird creatures that he's doing experiments on, this is kind of where they live. So we want to give it a little bit of a different feel. There's a lot more. It feels like experimentation. This is just the lighting and everything in this hallway is just really cool. There's a lot more tanks with creatures in them. This whole scene right here where they kind of like blow the tops off and then creatures come out of them. It's just
it's very what's the word for it? It's very new and strange, but also it has a very nostalgic feel if you play the other Elder Scrolls games, because this is kind of, you find somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It turns out there's some Dwemer pipes and bits and pieces, and then the further in you get, the more crazy it gets, and then there's a dude at the end laughing his ass off. It does remind you of the single player, even though it's very fresh, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we always try to take, to have that, to ground it in the world, because we could have asked for like all kinds of new crazy things, that would have been brand new that nobody had seen before and stuff like that. But it always helps us. Oh, man, what is up with my force locks? That's the 3rd one.
I don't have any.
All right. Anyways, we wanted. When we came here, we were like, all right, well, we have to sell this as it's a place in Tamriel. So, yeah, we could make something brand new and stuff like that, but it makes more sense to say, you know what, they just retrofitted a Dwemer structure.
Yeah.
Turn off this vitalizer flow.
It's recognizable, though. It's not something that, I mean, I know you could go really, really far with it, and I don't think too many people would be mad about it because it's new stuff. But then to still be grounded, to quote you, and understand that it's still within the Tamriel kind of world and lore and all the rest of it, it's been done very well to be able to still recognize everything, even though it is different. The fundamentals of design.
Yeah, and I think that using it, setting it in Blackreach also helped a lot because we could lean on some of the stuff that we've done in Black Reach. So
Yeah.
you have even the rocks and everything, how that kind of fits together. That helped out a lot with really selling it. But then, incorporating kind of whatever we can to. All right, it's another curator. That means
It's Juffy time.
I knew you were going to say that.
Had to. On live stream, I paid no attention to any mechanics whatsoever. I'm full of mechanics. You've seen the videos. I like the fact that there are mechanics and everything. I like to teach people from the ground up. But this here, as soon as I went full Juffy, I was like, you know what? Hold my beer. Don't drink any. I'm going to be back for it.
Yeah.
Ah, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The thing is, this is kind of... We didn't expect it to be this nuts, but when we saw the Juffy transformation in March of Sacrifices, you turned into the memento thing. Oh, woo, that was good.
Yeah.
It was awesome, but it was short-lived. And then this is just like, well, yeah, we want
What's
this.
funny is we actually have to do... somebody else had asked me this the other day about the werewolf transformation. And this one, the werewolf behemoth transformation. You guys ran ahead of me. So, now you suffer through fours. But anyways, there's actually so monsters and player characters are not built the same.
Sure.
Monsters don't have to do everything that players do. Stuff like moving backwards or strafing. Monsters just don't do that.
No.
So when we do this kind of thing where we take a monster and we incorporate players to be able to do it, we have to solve all those issues. So there's actually a considerable amount of animation work that has to be done in order to ensure that players can be these kind of things. So that kind of speaks to a little bit when people say, oh, well, you should just, do this all the time or do this all the time. It's like, I mean, it does matter, kind of the nature of how these things were created. They also won't have a lot of the, just the animations to support normal ability use or something. So
did you have to re-rig the whole thing?
No, we just had to.
But there's lots of animation work, like Mike said, to make them move backwards and jump.
Holy cow!
Stuff like that.
So did you have any? This is probably a yes, but while you were creating the rigs for the animation for the werewolf to be able to interact with it like a character, did you have any awkward bugs that happened?
Oh yes.
Like the dragons when they wouldn't land?
No, I mean there was weird stuff with Shane could probably speak to more of those. What were some of the weird bugs that we had with the werewolf behemoth? Getting that to work.
I mean, like you guys were saying, we needed new animations. So before we had a jump, that looked really awkward.
Well, that's
adjusting
right. I remember
the sprint.
that. It just,
some of the abilities on and off. Just trying to nail down the feel of each ability, how fast it can cast. We originally had it at a longer cast time, but just to make it feel more like a smooth transition from what you're used to on your player character to using this new ability bar. We sped up all those things and they're all instant cast now. So maybe it was more iteration and things that we saw, an evolution of that, than it was trying to, there were bugs and things along the way, but it was more iteration.
I do remember jump. Jump was funny because they didn't actually have kind of a jump anim, so it was just them looked like standing but in the air.
Oh, like the cats in Sunspire?
Yes.
It must be a bit of a challenge to try and get through all that stuff, though, because when you think you've got it right, and then all of a sudden all these things happening, why is it doing that? Why?
I mean, that's really a testament to our QA team to come in and say, because they're going to say, we're going to turn people on the werewolf behemoths, and they're going to do that. They're going to run in, they're going to jump with it, they're going to activate synergies, they're going to try to lockpick with it.
Yeah.
They're going to do all this stuff. So, they're going to be the ones that we're going to be like, oh, we didn't think of that, and they catch these kind of things.
Gotcha.
It's like I said, it's really a testament. They're really good. They've been doing this for a while, so, and they've been dealing with our crazy for a while too. So they kind of know how to. They kind of know how to fit it all together. So this is Arcace's final room. This is another one that's just this kind of collaboration between art and design and world building and stuff, where Shane had come up with this crazy design for this room. I remember the map that we originally had for this room, where you just kind of you tried in Paint or Photoshop.
It might have been a combination of the two.
Yeah. So he drew this map, and we're like, what? And then we took it to concept and say, this is what we need. And then they came up with this just absolutely fantastic concept piece. And then we built it. And this looks, everything that we had kind of like hoped for and needed and stuff like that. So it's really just all come together, and it's fantastic. Also, we like the we like to telegraph abilities and stuff like this. So this is kind of our pre-fight thing, where we give you the opportunity to take a look at the werewolf behemoth transformation. You can mouse over all the abilities, take a look at them, see what they do before it matters, before you can die to it. So
Yeah,
you've got
since
an
you guys brought
ultimate
up-
too.
he does. Actually, the ultimate is fantastic, because when you leap, what it does is it does this AoE ring, and then other werewolf behemoths can activate it, and then all of their abilities crit.
Nice. See, that
So
was a
it's
feature
actually-
I liked. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it's a really cool actual ultimate that is super useful. What were you gonna say?
The part, well, you've made it very clear that obviously it's a potion that you take, you turn into a werewolf, not because you're bitten by one or anything like that. You'd have no lycanthropy whatsoever. And then to sate it, instead of the boss confronting you while you're all behemoth and all the rest of it, and he just beats you into submission, he sprays the room full of toxins that take that buff away. That
Not only that,
was very
he actually kills his followers. So if there's little dudes that are still hanging out around here when you're doing this, and he sprays that, they die. And that's again to sell that aspect of, he first of all, he doesn't care about his followers at all, and he has antidotes for his own things. You know what I mean? So you get these potions. He's created these, so he has antidotes for these. So he's not worried about it.
I could do this all day.
So you see the little guys, they all kind of like choke and die.
Oh, yeah, I see them. Just heartless. He doesn't care.
He doesn't. What a jerk, right?
Should have been a necromancer.
Yeah.
No, because he would have
doesn't
got them back
wanna-
up.
Yeah, right? They would have been...
It's such a chaotic fight as well. Stuff going off everywhere.
So this green potion that you see spinning,
Yeah.
when the green stuff runs over you, it causes you to throw up. So it stuns you in place and causes you to throw up.
Well, like the suspicious meat thingy.
Yeah. Yep. That's City of Ash too, I think, right?
The memento. Where's it gone? If I had ulti then, I don't care, I'm gonna hit him with everything anyway. The slam is amazing. That on the stream is called Juffy Smash, by the way.
Yeah. I know Shane has done a lot of iteration on this to make it a little bit better to weave some of these abilities and stuff.
Yeah.
So the first iteration we had on PTS, it was a little bit slower and stuff, and done a lot of work to kind of like make that feel a little bit better. This is actually really cool. As you were fighting, Gwendis was actually going around and sabotaging his machine, which is what causes it to blow up now. But he also turns into lightning form. So this is one of the best parts about his abilities, because now he goes crazy and he's like, ultimate power!
His laugh is insane.
It is, right?
He is too cool for a boss.
But that is it. That is our cases. The Mad. We did all the bosses, all the secrets. If you don't do the secrets, and I don't know if you haven't done them before, but if you don't do the secrets, if you go over here to this sarcophagus, you see there's a Blood Knight in here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do the secrets and kill the Blood Knights and turn off the Vitalizer control, this guy will bust out during the fight. This guy will bust out of the sarcophagus and fight you.
Nice.
So it actually is an added level of difficulty by not turning off the
doing
Vitalizer.
it.
What'd you say?
Where'd he go?
I said spoilers, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. Like I said, that's the hardest version of this fight is not turning off the Vitalizer control, not getting buffs, and activating hard mode.
Is there an
yeah.
achievement for this dude? I haven't checked.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's plenty of achievements for it. And actually, that's the hardest of the hard achievement is doing all of this without anything.
Okay.
Without any benefits, I guess. Let's see. 4.
I didn't even check them yet. Where are they?
Yeah. Is there achievements?
No, I'm sure there are, but I meant for the knight, for the dude in the coffin.
There's an achievement for completing an event without killing those guys, and you can't. I think you have to avoid taking any of the buffs as well.
Gotcha. Defeat after 3 or more stacks of Blood Rage and Fracture in Vet Stone Garden. There's a few. Strike the
There
Stone
is
Behemoth with.
True Genius.
You found it?
No, True Genius doesn't say anything about not needing the.
Oh, so you can get the title without that part. But there is another achievement for it.
Oh, okay. So this one is Old Fashioned. Defeat Arcassus the Mad after raising the challenge banner without deactivating the Vitalizer float controls or gaining the benefits of his alchemy equipment.
Yeah, you actually
So
have to do
you
that
can
one.
only activate. You can only activate Arcassus' challenge banner if you've done the other 2.
Okay.
So that's the default. You know, you have to do all the things.
So that's instead.
It doesn't have.
Go on, say.
Yeah, it doesn't have a time. It doesn't have the time limit on it. But that is the fight in the hardest way possible.
Gotcha. So you've got an extra if you do all the hard modes. I really like the hard modes in the other bosses. The fact that you can do that, I think that's going to be a big kind of plus, especially for the overall community as far as dungeon difficulties are concerned. Because rightly so, you said earlier they have asked, and lots of people have asked for a higher difficulty or a third difficulty.
Right. Yeah.
I really like the idea. I mean, I can't obviously request such extravagant things, but I would like to see this kind of stuff in some of the already made dungeons later on. Hint, hint. But the fact that you're doing it now is really good. Say again, sorry?
You mean some of the older dungeons?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But the fact that this is a thing is actually very cool. I mean, I'm assuming this is going to be a consistent thing for next dungeons, or is this more of a, does the community like it, should we continue?
I mean, like I said, we're not ruling anything out, but I'm not going to commit to saying, oh, we're going to do this with every dungeon.
Of course, of course.
More along the line. Absolutely, we're going to take a look at it. I kind of like how the flow and the pacing of the dungeon works, and so far it seems like players have responded really well to it. They still appreciate kind of the length of the dungeon, all the extra stuff that you can do in here and stuff like that. So,
yeah, it's not
I
as
haven't
long as
heard
they
any
have muscle.
negative feedback. Yeah, I haven't heard any negative feedback for it. So, to touch on what you said though a minute ago about going back and doing the old ones, it's not necessarily as easy as it may sound, just because these fights are more built from the ground up to have a hard mode.
Sure.
So to go back and retrofit a fight, more often than not, will probably feel less impactful. The reason is, like, if you look at some of the original dungeons that we did that we added hard modes to, let's take Fungal Grotto, for example. When we added a hard mode to the Dread King, for one Tamriel when we bumped that up and had
Yeah,
a veteran version of it. All it does is kind of add health and a little bit of power to him and stuff like that. So it became less impactful, and that's just because of the nature of going back and doing that kind of thing. And do we have the resources to add whole new abilities and whole new packages and stuff like that? So I don't know that that's in the cards right now to go back and take a look at old ones. But we do like it a lot for trials, and this dungeon so far has been pretty well received, so we're pretty happy with how this has come out.
I think because when people join streams as well, they see a dungeon, they're like, oh, are you on hard mode? They instantly assume that the overall dungeon is hard mode if they're a fairly newer player. And like, no, the hard mode is only on the boss. But with this being added, that does change the whole kind of experience of it. I mean, I don't know if you could say people want flat answers all the time. I'm definitely not one for that. But in comparison to the basic fight itself, how much more difficult or how much more complex are the harder versions of the other fights, not just the last boss? From base to hard mode? Is it just a case of more health and they hit harder, or are there a lot of introductions?
Usually it augments some of the abilities. It depends on how much time we would have for the encounter for doing that. If you look at Sunspire, that's a good example of kind of what we want to do when you activate hard mode. It's not just more health. I mean, more health is a big part of it, but it's using the abilities and how many more times they use their abilities and stuff like that. And we're always trying to look at when we do augment a fight for hard mode, adding some wrinkles and stuff like that. Just a little bit more power and a little bit more health. Probably doesn't get us kind of to the level that the community would want. They want something new. They want new wrinkles thrown into it.
Yeah.
So whenever possible, we try to do that when we evaluate a fight for hard mode.
More stuff
this fight in particular, I know that you talked about the other two fights, but this fight in particular, the final boss is really kicked up to 11 with what you have to do. So
would you say it's
this is probably one
of lair?
Yeah, this is one of the hardest hard modes we've done, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's really difficult. And it's but it's a learn difficult, like you can learn to do it, right? You know what I mean? It's like it's learning and execution rather than say more randomness heavy. You know what I mean? It's not Moon Hunter or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
So
or anything
you
like
can
that.
be
It's
in
more,
control of it if you know what you're doing.
Yep. You have to learn how and then just execute it in really, really tight windows.
That's actually pretty good. I like the idea of that, because there are some mechanics that are just difficult until you know what you're doing, and then there are other ones. Baron 7, Maelstrom, sneeze, sorry. Where things are just completely random and it's completely out of your control. There's nothing you can do. So the fact that you're gonna get trouble for that forever. So the fact that you've got something that is deliberately forced upon learning and then performing versus, well, tough, you're just dead because you are. I like the fact that that's kind of creeping in a bit more. There is still, of course, a welcome kind of randomness in some areas, but more mechanics, especially since Unhallowed Grave with the Kiln boss as well. I've seen a lot of people really appreciate that kind of structure, where, sure, the pad is random, but the mechanic is in your control. Do you know what I mean? That has actually, I don't know what you get feedback-wise, but from myself, what I see, a lot of people have actually really, really liked that kind of stuff. So we will see. Okay. I'm going to smash it on live anyway. But we've got to wait, because it's, what, 3-4 weeks for console? I don't know. 3 weeks for console?
What is yes, September 1st, I think. So.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Did you have any other questions for us?
Let me look at the list. Where's my mammoth? You brought out Skyrim and you didn't give me a mammoth.
We give you a werewolf transformation and you ask for a mammoth.
I'll take the werewolf transformation.
Unbelievable.
I take the werewolf transformation. I'll have the mammoth mount later.
Are you never satisfied?
Of course I'm not. I have a couple of questions from other people. Let me see. I don't know if they were serious ones, though. I did tell people to ask. There's awkward ones. Oh god, can we make this? Isn't anything to do with the DLC, in fact, but something that I mean, it might help with performance. Who knows? I know you're going over a lot of different performance issues, especially with AOE's and all that kind of stuff. People have requested that you have a feature where you can hide other people's pets in PvE. Is that something you could consider or have been asked by other people before?
I mean, we've definitely heard
heard
that request. The problem with anything that's combat related is if you have the ability to hide it, then you have to put special logic in there to unhide it when it is in combat. So you know, anything can be done. It's just going through all the rules to find all of the ways that players will be creative with those rules.
You mean? Never mind. I had a word. But
yeah, we've definitely heard that.
Because when it gets to a situation where, say for argument's sake, you choose to take 8 pet orcs, and you've got Jeff, you've from the helmet, you've got the bird, you've got the scamp, you've got iron arrows, and all the rest of it. I can appreciate obviously one of them is an ultimate, and it does have a synergy effect, and you probably do want to have that. But when it gets too many pets all clustered up, lots of people have obviously asked if you could remove something like that or just hide it, just like you could with other people's AoEs where you couldn't see them. But at the same time, I mean, how much of an impact do you see with, I know that you probably can't answer this straight, with the potential to AoE alterations within the performance? How much of that do you think will actually help inside those situations? Because I know too many pets, too many AoEs, blah, 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 it gets a bit nuts. When the AoEs are kind of toned down, if they do get to that stage, do you think that will impact it so that high pet kind of situations won't be quite as bad as they were before?
Well, I mean,
quite a lot.
Part of the reason why we're doing the tests in Cyrodiil is to see what impact the performance has, you know, or these abilities have on performance. We're only doing it in Cyrodiil. We're not doing it in trials or in dungeons. So that's not going to really carry over.
Okay.
I think the place where people really get upset about pets is when you get into the cities and towns, especially when you're doing your writs or talking to other NPCs. People always like to park their pets on top of the writ turn-in boxes or on top of, you know, the crafting stations and things like that. So I think if there's anything we're going to do with things on that, it would be more to kind of curb that behavior, at least until we see how the performance, you know, changes in Cyrodiil.
That actually makes a bit of sense. So with the performance of Cyrodiil, I know you've done some PTS tests and all the rest of it. You haven't done obviously the live one just yet. Have you seen much of an impact on a small scale yet?
We haven't really, but that makes sense because we really only see the performance problems on the live servers when you have the huge... well, A, when the servers are under load because everybody's on the server, and B, there's just significantly more people out there playing than are ever on the PTS server. So really what we did on PTS was make sure we could turn the tests on and off and make sure they worked. And then going in and actually measuring the performance is going to be a live server thing.
Fantastic. The one thing I am happy about so far, and I hope it translates over to live, is that you have addressed the lightning and resto stuff heavy attack. Because that was an issue and still is on live. You try and hold a heavy attack and he just sits there squatting. And in the last, what have we had, 4 or 5 weeks now of PTS, I have not had that issue once. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I haven't had it once. So I hope that does translate over to live.
I know there's a few bug fixes with that are in 4.27, so that's good that they are, so far, fingers crossed, translating over.
I hope so, because that's quite a big one. It can actually make or break a situation as well, especially if people are in, well, even Maelstrom and stuff like that, or if they're really short on resources, you need one heal, you can't get heavy attack and it's not firing, anything like that. And that so far in testing has actually looked really, really nice, and yeah, hopefully that does transfer over. I mean, I gather there's not much more you can really say on performances because we can't really test it yet until, what, is it 28th, 27th, 28th on live?
It's next week, isn't it?
The Cyrodiil stuff, I mean.
Oh, the actual tests?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I think update 27 goes to PC next week, right?
Yeah, 24th. If I've got my dates right.
I have so many dates in my head. It's so hard to keep them all straight.
Yeah, the calendar's
Yes.
there, but nothing really lines up.
24. Yeah, March 735th.
So
One
basically,
thing I will
everyone has
say,
to
though,
cram
about
into Cyrodiil. Go on, Finn.
One thing I will say about the pets, because you had mentioned hiding other people's pets. It's I can understand the perspective from like going into a dungeon with a PvP, or I mean, with a DPS pet Sork, for instance, or something like that.
Yeah.
The problem is where you get into a situation where those pets are drawing aggro, which isn't necessarily in dungeons, but like if you're out in the world and somebody has their pets out and those pets have drawn aggro, but you're hiding them, you have a monster sitting 20 meters away from a player fighting nothing.
Hitting thin air.
You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have some like really weird looking situations.
That's very true.
Where, yeah, that AOE's we don't have that issue, because if I drop an AOE on a monster and it's still gonna come and attack me, whatever. I don't need to necessarily see that AOE to it because the monster is taking damage. But if you have it actively attacking something that you can't see, we generally shy away from that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, those are just some of the considerations we would have when we talk about hiding player pets from.
That was a good answer, Finn.
Hey, you know, I have my moments.
You did. That's a valid point. I didn't even consider that. Well, I know you're short for time because it's almost 4 now. But apart from the Mammoth Mount, and I'm mostly looking forward to stuff, to be fair. I don't really have too many questions at the moment because obviously I know that the big tests are coming up, so we can't really go over them at the moment. But I know obviously you mentioned about performance at the beginning. You'll obviously hear screams if it doesn't work out, but hopefully it does. I guess you can only really tell, like, as you said, when it's on live. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're doing the tests.
But I do like what you did with the sets so far. Some of them I think might need adjusting because they're a little too powerful, but I like the fact that you've revisited stuff that is potentially either useless or unused and given them a new kind of breath of life, if you like. There's a lot of really cool stuff with some of the base sets that you've changed, although there is one I still hate, but we'll go over that another time because you haven't finished it yet, I don't think. Parabellum, by the way, thank you very much for actually making that a set that people can use. Because before it was terrible. It was, you have a damage shield if you don't take damage. No comment. No comment. But anyway, guys, all jokes on that side. Thank you very, very much for this. I hugely appreciate it. And you will hear from me, of course, if everything goes great. And you'll also hear from me if it doesn't.
I'm pretty sure we're going to hear from you.
Yeah, you will. All right, thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. Have a good day.
Talk to you later, man.
Thanks, man.
Okay, bye-bye.